Candice, thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure speaking to you. I know you have been in the market space in the real estate industry for quite some time. Uh, what are you up to now? Can you tell us?
Sure. I think compared to some, I've had quite a varied life in the States. Started out nearly a quarter of a century ago now as a lawyer. And after 10 years of commercial real estate legals, I realized there were much more fun ways of making money in real estate or enjoying myself more.
For sure.
And the last 5 or so years, I got very involved in the credit space, which has changed immeasurably since I started out as a lawyer. I think when I started out, there might have been 30 lenders as CRE. That's
That's
now,
crazy.
yeah.
And,
So,
and
and so now I run the business development for two different companies,
right.
both in Europe. One is on the loan management side,
Yeah.
loan servicing, management, credit management, and that's called Trimont.
hmm
And the other company I work with is a debt and equity advisory platform called BBS Cat.
And, interesting. And talking about credit, you're right. In the last few years, the credit space has changed a lot, and you are watching the change happen in front of you. Can you tell us where do you think we're going? Where is the credit going? What's going to happen next?
Well, it's so interesting because credit 30 years ago was pretty binary.
Mhm.
The average sponsor would have one or two relationships with a high street bank, and you would have some sort of relationship with your lender, and you would go in and you'd ask for 75% LTV, and you were given your. Now, first of all, the capital stacks got really complex and interesting.
Mhm.
So you can have your senior, and now loan on loans become flavor of the month for many, either to get your returns to where you need them to go. And for a number of the banks, it's a great way to originate now. It's much easier. You can just plug in. But obviously, with what's happened with all the constraints, the LTVs are coming down.
Mhm.
And that's not just with the clearers, that's across the stack. So you now then have to have the next part. So that's the maze, or you've got prefect, or you've got the whole loan solution. So the capital stack's becoming quite complex, quite interesting, a lot of different players. I think that's going to continue to happen because with Basel 4, 3.1, whatever you want to refer to it, the regulatory stresses on the banks are going to continue, which is going to allow for so many more of these alternative lenders to come in. And I think everyone is going to find new ingenious ways to bring in capital solutions.
At the moment, you see a lot of volatility in the market. Do you believe that will change in the new time, or do you see more distress coming?
Well, when I had my stint in insurance, I remember like having to learn coming away from law into real estate insurance, and we were all taught about these once a decade black swans, these things that would come to create this volatility that was spread throughout the markets. We've had a black swan every year now for the last 5. It's like it keeps coming. So are there going to be more? Unfortunately, there are. And if we all had crystal balls, we wouldn't probably be in real estate. We'd be very wealthy somewhere else doing something different. So could there be another pandemic? Absolutely. Are there going to be more wars? Everybody wish there weren't, but there will be. But if we were to sort of look at the status quo now, and it's always an interesting time. We talk about interesting times. It's always interesting. We are an evolving species who are always changing. But we have this weird scenario post-COVID where we've got the largest inactive populace we've ever had, like 21%, which is keeping that wage growth pressure. And obviously we've had all the inflationary issues, and we've had the highest interest rate hike in 35 years. But we're a positive bunch. So most think there's going to be a rate cut. Is it 0.25 beginning of the summer? Could there be 2 this year? Are we going to get to a new norm that's going to sit at the 4.25, 4.5? I think it's just uncertainty is great in some ways because it creates opportunity, but it also creates frustration because people are trying to call the market.
Mhm.
But I think there is definitely distress coming. I don't think it's going to be anything like post GFC for a number of reasons. But what have we got? We've got 176 billion worth of debt that's going to get recapitalized. How's that going to work? We're also a very different beast from America. We're much nicer here. The banks are much nicer and happier to say, we're just going to allow the extending and the pretending for another little while. I think the philosophy in America is very different for a number of reasons, but the keys back is a very common. Here we don't want to do it, but it will be coming, but I think it's going to be slow. So yeah, there's going to be more pain. Pain at least is going to mean volatility, which at least means M&A, which means deal flow, and most of us are deal junkies and we want to see some deals. And there's a lot of liquidity out there that's desperate to be placed. So
is there any specific asset class that you think will bring more opportunities to investors?
Post any pressure, GFC, where we are now, development always gets hit first. Your cost constraints, your inflationary pressures, all your issues, your cost of debt. Development is just unbelievably difficult across the stack. Residential has just been strong throughout. Logistics has been unbelievably strong, but when you were buying logistics in the low threes or sub threes, so it has to just be price corrected. Hospitality, but we all have very short-term memories. I mean, during COVID, there was this whole, is anyone going to go back and stay in a hotel? And look how well hospitality's been doing.
Very well.
So beds have stayed really strong. You just wonder, you know, can those rental increases keep going the way they're going? I think the biggest worry for many now is the government going to come into play? You know, are there going to be rent controls? And the question is, rent controls is pretty difficult, but it's the not knowing if there's going to be rent controls just even worse, because you can't put it into your underwrite, you can't put it into your assumptions. So at least in Ireland, you sort of know where you are now. Same with some of Europe, but in the UK, it's been hovering. You know, is it coming? But I'd say Resi's strong. I think everyone got very excited around meds, but I think the more people have looked into it, there aren't that many that really understand it, and really, life science, is it that big an asset class? I don't think so. Data centers, you know, obviously a few. Starbreeze have just done I've come into the space, but it's a very nuanced space. I don't know much about it. Where's that going to be? I think it's going to be very localized. But I'm hoping that the next 5 or so years there's going to be some new interesting asset classes, some hybrids, some things we just haven't thought about yet, because technology is going to take us to the next place. But I think planning, if things don't get changed with planning, it's just still going to be a slow, draconian system.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.